Because Envision has been around for a really long time, we've had the pleasure and opportunity to support really old browsers like IE6, which means that when we were setting up our single-page applications, or SPAs, we chose to use the URL fragment to define our client-side routing. And for the most part, this has worked really well for the last decade. However, if we refresh and we look at the network activity, you can see that there is no concept of the hello world fragment here, and that is because by its nature, this fragment is a client-side only technology, which means that it's not getting submitted to the server, which means that maintaining it across URL redirects can be complicated when you start to pass a user outside of your domain of control. So for the most part, if you're just dealing within your SPA, your single page application, the fact that this is not a server-side value isn't an issue. However, if I need to pass a user to a single sign-on context, where the identity provider is outside of our application, having to maintain this route via a hash becomes very, very challenging. So to deal with that, what I've tried to start doing is providing this hash as a query string parameter when I need to generate links that might pass a user through an authentication workflow. So to see what I mean, let's take a look at some code, and you can see here I have two different types of URLs. The first one being a fragment-based deep link, and a user might bookmark this, a user might copy and paste it to another coworker, and it has a route here in the URL fragment. The second and newer type of link that I'm trying to generate in my transactional emails, again, sending links to users that may have to go through an authentication workflow, I'm providing that same route, path to thing, as a query string parameter, SPA route. And if we look at both of these workflows, and we go to our ingress here, what you can see is that I get redirected to my login, I log in, and I have my route. And that's using the older hash mode routing. So if we try again with the second URL, this is the one that uses the SPA route query string. Again, we get bounced to the login, and we log in, and you can see that I've maintained the routing in both cases. So let's take a look at how the mechanics of this differ from case to case. So first, let's take a look at our hash mode routing. A bookmarked URL, a URL that was copy pasted to another user. So we would click on that, we would get sent to the SPA would bounce us back to the login. So let's just follow that workflow. So here we are in our ingress, we're getting sent to the SPA, we have our hash mode route, we get sent to the SPA. At the very top, the SPA sees that we are not logged in, it needs to redirect us to the login experience, and as part of that redirect, we're going to send a redirect to URL as the target that the user should be redirected to after authentication. Now remember, the HTML mode, that fragment value, is never sent to the server. However, if we look at the URL, what you can see is that fragment is being maintained by the browser across that 302 redirect. So what we're going to do at this point is take that value and, using JavaScript, apply it to a hidden form field in our login form. And you can see here I have my SPA route, and it has been populated with path to thing. So I've taken that hash out of the URL, I've put it into the submission form, into the login form. So when I submit, I have both my redirect to that sends me back into my SPA, and I have my SPA route, which represents my deep link view. And if we look at the processing for our login, what you can see is that when we have a redirect to, we're going to create a new URL based on that redirect to, and then we're going to merge the SPA route form field into that redirect to URL, such that when I now log in, let's clear the network activity, what you can see is that I am being redirected to the SPA experience, and that SPA route now has my path to thing route. And then you'll notice that there's another network activity that's pulling that SPA route out of the query string and applying it to the fragment. So let's take a look at how that happens. So if we jump now from our login page to our single page application, and we scroll down, what we can see is that if the SPA route is included in the query string, we're creating another dynamic URL, this time based on the current URL. We're removing the SPA route from the query string parameters, but we are reapplying it to the same URL as a fragment, or that hash, and now we're forwarding the user to that location. So essentially we're moving the SPA route from the query string into the hash and refreshing the page, more or less. And that is how we're able to maintain that route using just our hash. So now let's look at the other workflow. This time we have our two links. In the second link, we're using that SPA route query string parameter. And again, we're deep linking to the application. So we're going to click in, we're going to hit the SPA is going to redirect us back to the login. So let's just think about how that works. So we have our ingress here. We're passing that route as the SPA route parameter in the query string, which means it's getting sent to the server as part of this location operation. And in our SPA, our single page application, again, we're not logged in, so we're going to be redirected to the login. We're going to grab the current URL. Now remember, the current URL at this point includes that SPA route query string, which is why if we look at the network activity to see how we got here, and we look at the query string for the redirect to, it includes in it the SPA route, which is our deep link back into the view. So this time, if we look at the hidden form fields, whereas in the previous one, we had a SPA route value, you can see that the SPA route value is at this time empty. And that's because that was being populated by the hash in the URL, the fragment in the URL. However, this time we're going to rely on the redirect to hidden value to include our SPA route. Now this time, when we submit our login form, again, we're going to have our redirect to. So we're simply going to redirect to the given URL. This time, SPA route is not going to be included because it's empty, and we're using this if populated. So this is an empty value. It's not going to override the SPA route that's already part of that redirect to, right? We already have it. Again, if we look at our URL, we already have it in our redirect to. We're going to send the user to the redirect to, which is our SPA experience. The SPA experience, again, is going to see that that SPA route is part of that redirect to URL. It's going to move it out of the URL query string parameters and into the fragment. We're going to refresh the page. And again, we've been able to maintain a deep link to this view through the authentication workflow. Now, the real difference here, again, is the fact that this path is being passed along either through the hash or as a query string. The main difference being that the query string gets sent to the server. It gives us more control over how that then gets propagated across an authentication workflow, which really only matters when you have to send the user outside of your application experience, such as through something like a single sign-on or a social media-based sign-on. And a lot of this is only relevant because we're using the hash mode routing. In more modern applications where you might be using HTML5 based routing, meaning you're using the browser's history mode to rewrite the URL on the client side, and then you have to glob that URL on the server side and all render it in the main SPA page anyway. So it's a trade-off of complexities, but this is how we've had to deal with it on the legacy application. Of course, your mileage may vary depending on your particular setup.